Some photos stick with you, not because they're beautiful or well taken, but because of the story behind them. There's something haunting about seeing someone smiling, living their life, completely unaware that it's their last moment caught on camera. These aren't just random snapshots. They're eerie glimpses into the final moments before tragedy struck. In this video, we're diving into 5 of the most terrifying last photos of people who were alive when the shutter clicked. On December 4th, 2012, in the heart of New York City, 57-year-old Kisuk Han lost his life in a moment so sudden and horrifying it would grip the nation and spark outrage around the world. He left the house that morning after a fight with his wife. Maybe it was just a moment of anger, or maybe he just needed some air. He didn't answer her calls after that. She kept trying, but he never came home. Later that day, on a crowded subway platform in Manhattan, Kisuk Han was shoved onto the tracks by a stranger during a brief and terrifying confrontation. Seconds later, as the roar of the Q train grew louder in the tunnel, a freelance photographer raised his camera and snapped a photo, capturing Han clinging to the edge of the platform, turning his head toward the oncoming train. The next morning, that image was on the front page of the New York Post. One word stamped over it in all caps: doomed. That photo, so stark, so brutal, sparked a nationwide firestorm, not just because of what it showed, but because of what it didn't. It didn't show someone reaching for Han's hand. It didn't show a frantic effort to pull him up. It showed isolation, helplessness, a man at the edge of life, moments from death, and a camera flash as the only answer. The man behind the lens, Umar Abbasi, later defended himself. He said there wasn't enough time, that Han was too far, that he was running toward him, firing his camera's flash to warn the train operator, that the man who pushed Han even turned toward him, and for a moment Abbasi feared he'd be the next one on the tracks. The time between the shove and the impact, maybe 22 seconds, maybe less. He took 49 photos in that time. Still, people demanded to know, could he have tried harder? Should he have dropped the camera? The debate raged. News anchors, journalists, even veteran photojournalists weighed in. Some gave Abbasi the benefit of the doubt. Most, though, reserved their outrage for the Post, for splashing such a horrific image across their front page, for turning a man's final moment into a headline. But what haunts people more than the ethics of the photo is what it says, not just about the photographer or the paper, but about us, about the way we consume tragedy, about who gets remembered with dignity and who becomes a spectacle. Kisuk Han was a Korean immigrant, a father, and a husband. But to many, in that moment, he was just the man in the photo. And for his wife and daughter, forced to see that picture repeated on TV, online, and social media scrolls, his death didn't end with the train. It played out again and again, frozen in time, impossible to escape. There's a chilling truth beneath the outrage. Some lives are allowed to pass quietly, others are put on display. When disasters strike places like Japan, media often focus on survivors, the strength, the rebuilding. But in places like Haiti or with people like Kisuk Han, the camera doesn't always look away. It lingers, it shows pain, it shows death, and somehow that's allowed. So ask yourself, when you saw the photo, did you look away or did you look closer? Because the image that claimed to inform the public may have done something else entirely. It reminded us that in the eyes of the media, not all lives are equal. And for Han, whose life ended on a subway track, what remains is a moment he never chose to share, one we will never forget. On the night of December 29, 2024, South Korea was shaken to its core. A Boeing 737-800 operated by Jju Air, carrying 181 souls from Bangkok to Muan International Airport, collided with a wall during landing, and within seconds the aircraft was engulfed in flames. The fire raged mercilessly through the cabin. Of all those on board, only 2 crew members survived. The rest, 179 people, were lost in one of the deadliest aviation disasters in South Korea's history. Among the victims was a 3-year-old boy, the youngest passenger on the flight. Hours before the crash, his parents had taken a photo of him gazing quietly out of the airplane window, the soft glow of the night sky casting gentle shadows across his small face. It was his very first trip abroad, his first plane ride, his first passport, still unstamped. That photo, posted to Instagram with a bittersweet caption, would soon become one of the most chilling final images ever shared. After the crash, it spread rapidly across the internet, breaking hearts and stirring a mix of sorrow and horror. Many who saw it called it haunting because they knew what was coming, and the boy in the photo didn't. The child had been on vacation with his parents, Kang Ko and Jin Lee Seon, who were just beginning to share the joys of travel with their son. The three had spent days exploring Thailand together, laughing, eating street food, and taking pictures, unaware that their return flight would end in catastrophe. When the plane went down, all three died together. What was supposed to be a family's happy memory turned into a nation's nightmare. As investigators combed through the wreckage, early reports suggested a devastating combination of a bird strike and poor weather conditions. The control tower had reportedly warned the crew about the risk, but the decision to land was made anyway. And now, families are left with ashes and silence. The crash site at Muan became a place of unbearable grief. Outside the airport, heartbroken loved ones camped for days, desperate for news, any word, any way to see or say goodbye to the ones they'd lost. Among the dead were 5 children under 10 years old. The youngest, that little boy in the window seat, became a symbol of all that was lost. His father, Kang Ko, had worked in the promotions department for the Kia Tigers baseball team. Friends, fans, and former colleagues flooded social media with their sorrow. Retired pitcher Kim Byung-hyun wrote, "I've been pressing like on pictures of my friend, his wife, and their 3-year-old son having a great time in Thailand. It gives me great pain." Sportscaster Jung Woo-young added, "He was great at his work, and the entire baseball broadcast team liked him. Me among them, of course. I want to pay condolences for him, his family, and the Tigers." Those words, those photos, frozen forever in time, are all that remain of a family full of life just days earlier. And that single image of the boy by the window, unaware of what's coming, lingers in the minds of everyone who's seen it. A moment of innocence, captured before everything changed. A reminder of how quickly joy can turn to tragedy. It started, like so many other adventures for Kurt Blair, under the stars, surrounded by snow, driven by a deep love for the mountains. But this time, he wouldn't come back. Kurt was 56 years old, a seasoned mountaineer from Colorado, and one of the few Americans certified by the International Federation of Mountain Guides. In early December 2024, he set off to climb Aoraki Mount Cook, the tallest and most unforgiving peak in New Zealand. He wasn't alone. He was joined by fellow American Carlos Romero and a Canadian climber whose name was never released. The 3 men had been spotted in good spirits at the plateau hut, 2,200 meters up, the night before they began their summit attempt. Clear skies stretched above them. The route was dangerous, but they had experience on their side. They left at 11 p.m., making their way up the treacherous Zurbriggen Ridge. Along the way, a pair of skiers who'd spent the night with them crossed paths with the climbers multiple times. Conditions were perfect, calm, crisp, and bright. Around 9:30 a.m., the skiers last saw the group 3/4 of the way to the summit. Then, silence. The climbers never made it to their scheduled helicopter pickup later that day. At first, Kurt's sister Katrina didn't panic. Things happen in the mountains, she told herself. Her brother was careful, experienced, a trained avalanche educator. But what began as quiet confidence slowly gave way to dread. There was no emergency beacon signal, an unusual oversight for someone like Kurt. No messages, no signs of life. Days passed. Then came the bitter clues. Romero's jacket was found thousands of meters below where they had last been seen. An ice axe, abandoned. Footprints in the snow, ending abruptly. Search teams believed one of them may have been struck by a falling rock, causing a deadly chain reaction that sent all three plummeting. The unforgiving landscape offered few answers, only silence. Katrina clung to hope. Even as the winds picked up and the crevasses yawned wider beneath the ice, she couldn't shake the idea that maybe, somehow, they were still alive, trapped, waiting. But then came the dream. One morning, she awoke with her brother's favorite song, Pinball Wizard by The Who, blaring in her head, as if someone had turned it on inside her mind. That's when she knew. "He's in a different dimension," she whispered. Soon after, Katrina shared the last photo Kurt ever took, a haunting shot of the mountains under a star-filled sky, with a thin strip of light stretching across the icy ridgeline. It's a quiet image, but in that silence, there's a chilling finality. To those who've seen it, the photo is more than just beautiful. It's terrifying, because it feels like a goodbye. Kurt Blair had lived a life most could only dream of. He was known in the climbing world not for arrogance or ego, but for kindness, precision, and love for the peaks. He died doing what he loved, somewhere high above the clouds, swallowed by the very mountains that gave his life meaning. And now, all that remains is a photo, a song, and a memory frozen in snow. It was supposed to be the most unforgettable moment of their lives. In September 2019, Steven Weber, a 39-year-old social worker from Baton Rouge, Louisiana, had taken his girlfriend, Kenesha Antoine, on a dream vacation to Tanzania. They were staying at the Manta Resort, in a one-of-a-kind underwater cabin anchored about 250 meters from the shore of Pemba Island, an isolated paradise floating in the Indian Ocean. But what started as a romantic escape turned into a devastating tragedy that would haunt everyone who witnessed it. On the third day of their stay, Steven had planned something extraordinary. He wanted to propose underwater, outside the submerged cabin's window where Kenesha was relaxing inside. He slipped on a mask and fins and dove into the crystal-clear water, alone. In his hand, sealed inside a plastic bag, was a handwritten note. As he floated before the glass, Kenesha began filming. She had no idea this moment would be the last time she ever saw him alive. Steven pressed the note against the window. The message read, "I can't hold my breath long enough to tell you everything I love about you, but everything I love more every day. Will you please be my wife?" He then flipped the note to reveal the proposal, reached into his shorts, and pulled out a ring. Smiling, full of love and anticipation, he began swimming upward. But something went wrong. Steven never made it back to the surface. Kenesha waited, watching, perhaps confused at first. Seconds turned to minutes. Panic set in. Divers were called, staff scrambled, but by the time help arrived, it was too late. There was nothing anyone could do. The man who had just poured out his heart beneath the sea had vanished into its depths forever. The resort's CEO later said everyone was shaken to the core. The underwater room, normally a place of wonder, had become the backdrop to a heartbreak beyond comprehension. Kenesha later shared the video and her grief in a heartbreaking Facebook post, writing that Steven never got to hear her answer. "There are no words adequate enough to honor the beautiful soul that is Steven Weber, Jr.," she penned on September 20th, 2019. "You never emerged from those depths, so you never got to hear my answer. Yes, yes, a million times, yes, I will marry you. We never got to embrace and celebrate the beginning of the rest of our lives together, as the best day of our lives turned into the worst, in the cruelest twist of fate imaginable. The cruelest irony? Their happiest moment had become their last." The Manta Resort released a somber statement, shaken by the tragedy. The U.S. Department of State confirmed the death, offering condolences, but no words could mend what had been broken. Imagine the agony of watching the love of your life disappear before your eyes. The ring still gleaming in the sunlight, the note still pressed against the glass, the future they planned now swallowed by the sea. Some love stories are cut short, some goodbyes come without warning, and some moments, meant to be the start of everything, become the end. This was supposed to be their happy ending. Instead, it's a haunting reminder of how fragile life and love can be. She was only 20 years old, full of hope, full of promise, far from home, but eager to discover the world. Ayano Tokumasu had left Japan to study English in Toronto. Bright and curious, she had made the long journey from Toyohashi in Aichi Prefecture to explore life beyond what she knew. For a young woman like her, every day in Canada was a new adventure, new words, new friendships, new places. And on that August day in 2011, she and a friend chose to visit one of the most awe-inspiring natural wonders on Earth, Niagara Falls. What happened next would become one of the most haunting tragedies ever witnessed at the falls. The two girls stood on the Canadian side, umbrellas in hand, as the sky above churned with gray clouds and the thunder of water roared below. They wandered the observation area, just like countless tourists do each day. They laughed, snapped photos, and soaked in the mist that clung to everything. It should have been a perfect memory. Surveillance footage later revealed Ayano standing near the edge, holding her umbrella, straddling the safety railing as many do when trying to capture a better view or pose for a picture. Perhaps she was trying to be playful or brave. Maybe she didn't realize how close she was to danger. She looked out across the churning falls, a curtain of white water cascading over the edge of the world, and then turned, as if to climb back over the railing. In an instant, she slipped. The umbrella tumbled from her grasp, her feet lost purchase, and she was gone. Just like that, she was swept away by the unforgiving current. Onlookers screamed, powerless. The water swallowed her, pulled her toward the precipice and hurled her over the edge. 1 second, she was smiling. The next, she had vanished into one of nature's most merciless forces. Emergency crews from both Canada and the United States sprang into action. Helicopters searched the river. Fire departments scanned the rocks. Divers waited, hoping for a miracle that never came. As the hours turned into a sleepless night and then into a day filled with grim silence, the search narrowed. There was no sign of Ayano, just the sound of the falls, louder than ever, and the weight of what had just happened. At her school, the Hansa Language Center in Toronto, no one could believe it. Classmates sat in stunned silence. Teachers wept behind closed doors. Elizabeth Grieve, the director of the campus, remembered Ayano as a cheerful girl, bright, bubbly, fluent beyond her years. She was taking 2 classes and had been just days away from completing her month-long course. "It's a shock for everybody here," Greve said quietly. "She was part of our family. For days, there was no closure, just the image of a girl with an umbrella at the edge of the world, and the ache of not knowing." Then, on the morning of Thursday, August 18th, a staff member at Cave of the Winds, an attraction on the U.S. side of the falls, spotted something in the water. Authorities were called. A body was retrieved from the river. By Friday, it was confirmed. It was Ayano. She had been found. But there would be no miracle, no second chance, only mourning, only memories. One photograph, taken by tourists moments before her fall, shows Ayano standing near the railing, unaware of the fate that waited just a step away. In it, she looks ordinary, perhaps a little curious, maybe even happy, but that still image has since become something else, a reminder, a ghost. She came to Canada to learn, to grow, to live, and in the end, she taught the world something none of us can afford to forget: how fleeting life can be, how close joy and tragedy often stand, separated by nothing more than a moment or a misstep, and how sometimes, even in the safest places, the world can take someone too soon.